Rain tapped softly on the windows of a small diner nestled in rural Georgia. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed low as Ellie wiped down the last table, ready to close for the night. That's when the door creaked open and a man stepped in, soaked from the storm. He wore a faded army jacket, and though his presence was quiet, there was a heaviness about him that filled the room. His eyes didn't meet hers, and he barely spoke as he slid into a corner booth. Ellie watched as he studied the menu, not like a hungry man choosing a meal, but like someone doing math in his head, measuring cost, weighing necessity. When she walked over, he sheepishly ordered only a coffee and a slice of toast, and slowly pulled a crumpled $5 bill from his pocket. Ellie could tell he had much more on his shoulders than he let on. Something inside her shifted. With a gentle smile, she stopped him. "Dinner's on me tonight," she said. "You look like you've been through enough. Let someone else serve you for once." He stared at her, stunned, as if unsure if he heard her right. Then, slowly, he nodded, his eyes glassy with emotion. He didn't say much, just a soft "thank you," but in that moment, it felt like everything. After he finished the hot meal she brought him, he slipped out without fanfare. Ellie went to clear his table, and that's when she found it. A napkin, folded neatly by the plate. Written in firm, deliberate handwriting were just 2 words, "You matter." In that quiet moment, surrounded by the smell of coffee and the sound of rain, Ellie felt something stir deep in her soul. She didn't just feed a stranger, she reminded him he was human. The sun rose gently over the sleepy town, casting golden light across Ellie's diner as she flipped the sign to open. It was a morning like any other, or at least it should have been. The regulars filtered in, settling into their favorite booths, sipping steaming coffee and trading local gossip over stacks of pancakes. But there was something off in the air. Ellie couldn't explain it, just a quiet tension that made the hairs on her neck stand up. Then came the cars. One by one, sleek black vehicles began pulling up and parking across the street, their engines left running. Men stepped out, not the usual state troopers or town deputies, but figures in dark suits, others in crisp army fatigues. They didn't speak to anyone. They just waited. Ellie wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out onto the front steps, squinting against the morning light. "You seeing this?" she asked a customer behind her. Before anyone could answer, the rumbling started. Low at first, like distant thunder, but growing louder, sharper. The cups inside the diner rattled slightly on their saucers. Heads turned toward the open field across the road. And then, like a scene from a movie, 3 massive military helicopters descended from the sky, whipping up dust and leaves, their blades chopping the silence to pieces. The townsfolk froze in place. Conversations died mid-sentence. Children covered their ears. Ellie's heart raced. Her eyes locked on the helicopters as they touched down, one after another. Soldiers disembarked, forming a protective circle. Her chest tightened. This had to be a mistake. This couldn't possibly be for her. "What's going on?" she whispered, more to herself than anyone else, as her small-town world turned suddenly, impossibly, upside down. As the rotor blades slowed and the dust settled, all eyes were fixed on the helicopter's open door. Boots hit the ground first, soldiers in formation, then men in suits. And finally, stepping into the morning light, came the same quiet man Ellie had served the night before. But this time, he looked completely different. Gone was the worn jacket and tired face. He now wore a crisp, full-dress uniform, adorned with medals that shimmered in the sun. A wave of recognition swept over Ellie, but confusion, too. He walked toward her with steady steps, flanked by security, eyes calm and focused. The crowd parted without a word as he approached the diner's porch. Ellie stood frozen, a dish towel still in her hand, her heart hammering in her chest. "Ma'am," he began, his voice clear and firm, yet gentle, "I'm not just a soldier. I'm the Secretary of the Army." Gasps rippled through the crowd behind her. Ellie's mouth fell open, stunned. Last night, he continued, I came here after burying one of my men, a brave young soldier who died in service. I didn't want a hotel or an escort. I just wanted to be among regular people, to feel something real. He looked into her eyes. I needed to know if kindness still lived in this country. If someone would see a weary stranger and treat him like a human being. He paused, his words hanging heavy in the warm air. You passed the test, he said softly. Without even knowing it was one. Tears welled in Ellie's eyes, not from pride, but from sheer disbelief. The man she thought she had helped, had come to remind her, and everyone watching, that even the smallest kindness can echo far beyond what we can see. The door to the diner swung open as the press surged forward, cameras flashing, microphones raised. Reporters barked questions, snapping photos of Ellie and the secretary standing side by side. The local sheriff stood off to the side, hat in hand, looking as stunned as everyone else. The small-town diner, once quiet and tucked away, had become the center of a story the world suddenly wanted to hear. Inside, the smell of coffee and bacon mixed with the hum of whispered amazement. The secretary raised his hand, and the room fell silent. He turned to the diners, the cameras, and finally, to Ellie. This place, he said, this little diner reminded me what I fight for. Not the politics or the medals, but the people. The soul of this country lives in places like this, in acts of quiet kindness that never make the news, until today. He took a folded paper from his aide and placed it gently on the counter. As of this moment, this diner is officially partnered with our Veteran Support Initiative. It will be renovated, fully funded, and permanently protected as a place of rest and dignity for any man or woman who's served. Ellie's hands flew to her mouth as the room erupted in emotion. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I didn't do anything special, she whispered, her voice breaking. The secretary smiled and reached for her hand. That's just it, he said. You didn't do it for attention. You didn't even know who I was. You reminded me that kindness doesn't ask for recognition, it gives without hesitation. Tears streamed down Ellie's face, and this time, no one in the diner held theirs back either. The cameras kept rolling, but for a moment, no one noticed. Because something far more powerful than a story was unfolding, a truth we often forget but desperately need to remember. Just 1 week later, Ellie's once quiet diner had transformed into a living monument to compassion. The old wooden booths were filled from open to close, veterans with medals on their chests, families with folded flags in their hearts, and curious travelers drawn in by the story that had touched the nation. Yet despite the crowds, the cameras, and the whirlwind of attention, Ellie stayed the same, pouring coffee, offering warm smiles, and treating each customer as if they were the only one who mattered. Above the counter, where the specials board used to hang, now sat a bronze plaque. It read, "To the woman who fed a soul, not a rank." People often pause just to read it, their hands brushing the cool metal, their eyes misting with quiet respect. Ellie, humble as ever, would just shake her head when people praised her. She didn't see herself as a hero. To her, kindness had always been as natural as breathing. Some mornings, she'd lean against the window between refills, watching the horizon where the helicopters had once touched down. You never know who you're serving, she would say to newcomers with a gentle smile. But serve them like they matter. And in that little diner, now a symbol of something far greater than food, the ripple of one small act continued to grow. Strangers became friends, soldiers found comfort, and broken hearts felt a little more whole. Because in the end, one simple dinner given in silence did more than feed a man, it reminded the world that one small act of kindness can echo through the world like the sound of helicopter blades in the morning sky. In a world often consumed by noise, headlines, and haste, this simple story reminds us of the quiet power of kindness. Ellie didn't set out to change a life. She didn't know she was serving one of the most powerful men in the military. She just saw a tired soul and chose to care. No spotlight. No agenda. Just human decency. But that single moment, offering a warm meal without expectation, set off a chain reaction that transformed not only her life, but the spirit of an entire town. What began as a small act in a small diner became a national message, that empathy still exists, and it matters more than we realize. In Ellie's story, we see ourselves, not in grand gestures, but in everyday choices. The way we treat strangers. The way we show up for each other without needing a reason. It's a reminder that no act of kindness is ever wasted, and sometimes the smallest gesture can reach the highest places. So the next time you meet someone quiet, weary, or overlooked, remember this. You may not know their name, their rank, or their burden, but your kindness could be the moment that echoes through their world like the sound of distant wings returning home. Because true strength doesn't always arrive in uniforms or helicopters, sometimes, it walks in quietly, sits at the counter, and is met with a plate of food, and a heart that simply says, "You matter."